this is Julia. Thank you so much for joining me on my craft room adventures. Today I'm back with day 7 of my 2020 holiday card series, and this time I made a card using Stamps and Dies by Hello Bluebird. I started out with an A7 panel of Bristol smooth cardstock, and I'm just ink blending Tumbled glass distress oxide ink, and then off camera I also added a little bit of broken china distress oxide ink around the edge because I wanted to create a lake. And I'm just using some shimmer spritz to add some more shine. For my background, I die cut another A7 panel with the Pond Builder die, and I'm using spun sugar, worn lipstick, picked raspberry, seedless preserves, and a tiny bit of black soot to ink blend that. And I'm just ink blending the colors back and forth until I'm happy with the result. And now I'm also adding some splatters of Lawn Fawn's liquid stardust to add a little bit more shimmer. I also die cut the Treehouse scene die, and I'm using Frayed Burlap and Walnut Stain Distress ink just to add some color to the main piece. And I also off camera colored the door of the treehouse in the same pink Copic marker combination that I'm using for my fairies, which is R81, R83, and R85. And now I'm also using the same colors and also a little bit of ground espresso on the additional elements of the treehouse just to give it a little bit more definition. And I'm also using a little bit of the ground espresso on that, on the main part of the treehouse. And now it's time for my coloring, and I'm using E40 markers for some of the hair on the fairies. The darkest color I'm using is E43, and I'm really trying to add lots of flicks to create the effect of movement in the hair so that it doesn't, look like helmet hair. And I'm just adding little flicks and just going along where the artist already drew the shaded areas. Then I'm blending that out a little bit with E41. And then I'm going in with E47, I'm sorry, because I really needed there, or I wanted there to be a lot more definition than I could reach with the E43. Then going in with E44. Again, just doing little flicks. And then just going back in with E43. Going back in with another layer of the E47 just to add a little bit more definition. Then going back in with E44. And then I'm going in with the same color combination for the remaining two fairies, the E43, then E44. Also going in with the E47 again. Again with the E44. And just going over it with E41 once more. Then for my remaining fairies, I'm using E30 markers. I'm using E33 just to lay down a base layer of flicks because I wanted a more reddish brown for this one. Then to darken it up, I'm using E37. Just adding lots of little flicks, and I still have to practice, like, generally the technique of flicking. Usually too heavy-handed for it, so it's not something I'm used to, so I really need to practice a lot on that. But I do like the coloring of the hair that I did today a lot better than what I've been doing before. So lots of practice needed, but at least it doesn't look like total helmet hair. Then I'm using E35 and just going over it a little bit with E30. E33 again, just going over the darkest areas, adding more flicks. Then again with E35. And bringing back the darkest shade, the E37. Then for the faces of the fairies, I just colored them all in my standard Caucasian skin tone colors, E11, E00, and E000. Just using the same colors on all of them, placing down the E11 where I want my darkest shadow to be. Then blending that out with E00. Just going over the edge and pulling the color down a little bit further. And then going in with E000 to blend everything together. Then I started coloring the dresses on the fairies and also those light strings. I'm using B02, then I'm using B00, and as my lightest shade I'm using B000. I wanted to keep the colored images fairly light, so I'm not using a ton of shading, and I also used the same blue combination on the Bluebird and also on the string of lights. Now for my pink combination, I'm using R85 as my darkest shade. Just adding it a little bit to the folds in her dress. And then I'm also blending that out again with the R83. Just going over the edge of the color, and then going in with R81, leaving a little bit of a white space, and then I'm blending that out with RV000. For my greens, I'm using G20 markers. As my darkest shade, I'm using G25, and I just flip them on their head because that way it's easier to flick the color so that there's a bit of movement on the trees. And I wanted to have the bottom of the layers as the lightest because I wanted to add some shimmer there so that it would resemble like they're a little bit covered in snow. Then I'm blending that out with G21 and then going in with G20. And then going in for a second layer with the G24, just adding lots of flicks. And I'm using the Skating Party stamp set, and I'm just using some Tumbled glass distress oxiding. I actually intended to use the broken china, but that was just way too dark. So I'm just cleaning that off and going back in with Tumbled glass. And I'm just using the swirl and the little swash from the stamp set just to add a little bit of motion on what will be like my ice skating pond for my fairies. I'm just double stamping that to have a little bit more color there. Then I'm just using a piece of extra cardstock and I'm using squeezed lemonade to ink blend a piece of cardstock to layer behind my treehouse. Then I'm using the warm holiday wishes or warm winter wishes? Warm holiday wishes from the Snow Play stamp set. And I'm just heat embossing that in white. I did let the background dry for a long time to make sure that nothing sticks, and then I just used my heat gun to heat set it. I added foam tape behind this panel, and I just used my MISTI to line it up so that it would be straight. Now I am just added liquid glue to the back of my treehouse, and I'm just placing that down a little bit higher up so that there's a little bit of a gap to the pond. And I will just trim off the excess in a little bit. Then I'm also using liquid glue to adhere my trees. Just placing one down by the treehouse and the other by the lake. And I added foam squares to the back of my fairies and the rest of my images. And now I'm just fiddling around with the placement of everything. I wanted it to look like they're all having a great time decorating the fairy house for Christmas. So they're adding all the fairy lights. And I just added liquid glue to this part of the light string so that the fairy on top is decorating the part with a window. Then she would probably hang it on the branch and that would be super cute. Then I'm adding the ice skating fairies. And one of them is also holding a light string so that they're having fun in the ice and also probably detangling. Well, they're magic, so they probably wouldn't have to spend hours detangling Christmas lights like I had to do. But yeah, then I'm just adding the last remaining fairy. I did color one more, but there wasn't room to add her as well. So this one is also playing with the light string, detangling with magic, of course, so it's much quicker. So then I also added the little bluebird for a little bit of a pop of blue up there. Then, of course, my favorite part on every card, adding lots of shimmer. I also already have the shimmer on the frozen lake. Now I'm also adding it to the Christmas lights, the fairy wings, and also the bow on the door and the hat on the bluebird. Also adding a little bit of sparkle to the trees. A little bit more, I mean, can never have too much sparkle. Then I realized that the light string, the top part of the light that would connect it to the string wasn't colored yet, so I just used my C7 marker and just quickly colored that in. Now I'm using the Nouveau Crystal Glaze to add shine to all of the Christmas lights on the light strings. I already added the shimmer pen there, so it's nice and sparkly and also shiny, so that's always pretty. And then I'm also using my favorite Stardust stickles just on, well, basically everything that's left. The white parts on the hat of the bird, the trees, the fairy wings, just a little bit along the edge of the wings of the fairies, so not covering it completely, just a little bit, tiny bit on the bow. And then I also decided to add a little bit of the stickles to the windows so that they look like they're like nice and icy. Then I decided just couldn't leave well enough alone, and I added these little 3D iridescent stars as well. I will list below where they're from. I think the company's called Buttons Galore. And yeah, I just added them down with some liquid glue, and that finishes off my card for today. I really, really love all the sparkle because, I mean, if fairies aren't sparkly, I don't know who is. And the frozen lake, I actually intended to use glitter paste on that, but it really didn't. The color that I had wasn't working with the background that I made, so I just used the shimmer spritz. And I'm just really happy with how it turned out. I really hope you enjoyed my day 7 for the holiday card series. I hope you're still staying safe and healthy. Have a wonderful day. Bye!